listening to Season 7 of the podcast, Belonging to Blackness. I'm your host, Dr. India. Welcome to another episode of the podcast, Belonging to Blackness, the space where Black brilliance, beauty, and boldness belong unapologetically. I'm your host, Dr. India. Folks, it's October and we are commemorating Black History Month in the UK with today's guest, the extraordinary Simon Frederick, internationally recognized contemporary visual artist, photographer, filmmaker, and broadcaster. Born in London to Grenadian parents, Simon's multidisciplinary practice delves into the nuances of Black identity, cultural memory, and the aesthetics of representation, using the power of portraiture and moving image to challenge and redefine mainstream narratives. Simon's work is celebrated for its striking composition, emotional resonance, and intellectual rigor, making him a pivotal figure in contemporary Black art. His groundbreaking series, Black is the New Black, on BBC, and They've Gotta Have Us, through Netflix, BBC, have redefined visual storytelling by elevating the presence of Black British figures in the national consciousness. He's been named one of the 100 most influential Black Britons in media and entertainment, served as a judge on Sky's Arts Master of Photography, and holds the distinction of having his portraits form the largest acquisition of African and Caribbean works in the National Portrait Gallery's permanent collection. Through his art and filmmaking, Simon brings the layered voices of Black British and Grenadian heritage into powerful cultural conversation. Let's explore his vision and what belonging truly means. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And that's a wonderful introduction you've given me there. I was sitting here blushing.
It's well-deserved and hard-earned. My global listeners are very much interested and looking forward to hearing about your journey. So are you ready?
I'm strapped in and ready to go.
Give Black Alliance is proud to support the podcast Talking Journeys of Belonging to Blackness, hosted by India Lorick Wilmot. The podcast is an exploration of all aspects of our Black communities, including gifts of time, talent, and treasure, while shedding a positive light on the African descendant experience globally. The Give Black Alliance informs, reforms, and transforms philanthropy to acknowledge and partner with our communities in order to bring about equitable change for all. To learn more about Give Black Alliance, visit us at giveblackalliance.org.
Act 1, Call to Adventure. Simon, I've always remarked that much of what inspires us and gives us purpose is autobiographically rooted. So you and I, we share a lot of similar characteristics, but for you in particular, you were born in England, but arrived to Grenada when you were about 2 years old and lived on the island for several years, even attending primary school before returning to the UK. So how would you say your Grenadian British upbringing has shaped your artistic lens and your connection to Black identity?
Well, I can tell you how it shaped my connection to Grenada. I remember one year being back home in London and I was drawing all the time. You give me an excuse, I would be drawing. I remember there was this picture of this eagle in this encyclopedia, and I remember doing a pastel drawing of it. I was so proud of it because to me, as my 8 or 9-year-old self, what I looked at as a pastel drawing and when I looked in the encyclopedia, they matched. My father took it away because my father's thing for education was reading. Drawing was something frivolous that you did. So he took it away from me. And I can't remember how many months later, going back to Grenada and walking up the stairs to my grandmother's house in Park Lane, St. George's, going up those stairs and then opening the glass doors. And on the right-hand wall, framed, was that picture. So my mother had taken it from my father, sent it to my grandmother. I don't know which one of them got it framed. I always tell people that was my first exhibit. One of my works in a frame on a wall was in that house in Grenada.
That's powerful. When I hear you speak about that experience too, being creative and being artistic in other spaces, that's something to celebrate. Creatives, artists are the voice or the reflection of what's happening in society. We tend to lean on their visions and representations. But I think in the practicality sense, parents, I'm biased too, as you know, a child of Caribbean parents, it's very myopic in terms of, can you sustain yourself? How much money can you make? Is this endeavor that you're engaging in, although it's creative and it's beautiful, can you make any money? All those other things are like play, but we have to get to the business of living life, right? Because they're responsibilities. I can imagine that tension for you.
Yeah, but remember as well where our parents came from, the education that they had, what they were taught. You know, a lot of people, when they emigrated, whether it was to the United States or to England, they were shocked by the fact that they arrived in this place that they thought all white people were sophisticated and educated, and found that there were a lot of white people that were completely uneducated and unsophisticated. That was a huge shock for them. It was not only the weather was a shock, they had been told a particular story.
Mm,
They weren't included in that story. They were just told that this is the story. They tried to include themselves within that story, but that story never told them what the possibilities of their life could be
mm,
outside of you go to school, you get a good education, and you get a profession or you get an apprenticeship. But to be an artist, to work in the arts, to be a poet, to be somebody that draws, to be a painter, to be a musician, you know, any of those things, they were just seen as pastimes. They weren't seen as things that you could make money from. I studied graphic design at college, and I never forget my dad asking my lecturer what a graphic designer could make a year, and him telling my father, probably the late 80s, the graphic designer, a creative director could make maybe 60,000 a year. It's a lot more than that now. And my dad was like, for what? For drawing? For what? And that opened his eyes. Times change, people change, and I don't think that there is a prouder father on the planet of my achievements than my father is
mm.
today. He has bragging rights that his son makes stuff that goes on television, and he can tell his friends these things over a glass of Rivers. And for those who don't know, Rivers is the rum of choice for many Grenadians.
I love that. If the idea is that with every generation, life gets better in terms of experiences, they don't want hardship. And oftentimes, the starving artist is the trope. Can you eat? Can you pay your bills? Right. And I think it's really full circle for you as part of this story that once he received some sort of reassurance and thought, oh, okay, my boy's going to be all right, he can sort of lean in and just perhaps get to a place of true appreciation of, well, what is happening in this mind of this young person? And I feel good about his choices. Now, in terms of going back to Grenada in those early years for you, are there particular childhood memories or stories from Grenada that have stayed with you and that specifically influenced your creative voice?
My grandmother's house was up on a hill looking down upon the Carenage. It's a bay, it's a natural dock. For anyone who's into postcards and photography, it's really quite quaint and very pretty. I got to look down on that every day, and I got to see the big ships coming in, and you know, they're like multi-story tower blocks. They're
Mm,
big beasts. And I got to look at that every day. I hadn't realized what an effect it had had on me
mm,
until many years later, living in London, where after another long winter, everything looks like it's black and white
right.
and devoid of color. It really affected me. It really affected my mood. I really started to feel really quite depressed, and ended up living after that in Portugal for 12 years, which is bright and light and almost like living in the Caribbean, except for the Atlantic Ocean is very cold. They really have great beaches there and love codfish as much as we do.
That's right.
I think that growing up in Grenada, there is a freedom as a child that you have that I've not seen replicated anywhere else.
Hmm.
Not in what we call the West anyway, not in London, not in New York or wherever. And I still see that freedom today. Larger children taking smaller children to school
Mm.
and walking to school. Yes, some people take their kids to school by car, but in the main, kids take each other to school. And that thing about saying good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone you meet on the street, that never leaves me. So it's not just the visual, it's the culture, it's the community spirit, it's the love that I feel on that island that has always evoked this feeling for me. But there is something else that we hardly ever talk about. Grenada's a very small island, but it's full of very passionate people.
Yes.
Grenada's a breadbasket. I mean, literally, you can pick up a seed, throw it in the soil, and come back a week later and it starts to grow. And I think the people are like that too. They have a nickname for each other. They call themselves children of the soil. And I believe that I am a child of the soil. But Grenadians punch above their weight. For a very small country, we achieve a lot. You know, the legacy of Maurice Bishop. Although I didn't go to university, I have spoken at a lot of universities. Sounds like an oxymoron. It's really strange to me meeting white middle class people who've never been to Grenada that are fans of the thinking and the politics of someone like Maurice Bishop.
Hmm.
Basically, in the last Olympics, we have three people who won medals at the
That's right.
Olympics. We punch above our weight. New Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell, yeah, taking the world by storm in terms of his intelligence, his good looks, his dress sense. All of these things are part and parcel of the Grenadian spirit.
Right.
People usually talk about Jamaicans as being out there and rebellious and whatever. And I think the Grenadians are not too far behind.
Absolutely.
In fact, in every film I make, I have to have some reference to Grenada in it. You know, so in They've Got to Have Us, there are four references.
Hmm.
One of the references is the fact that Island in the Sun, which was made in 1957, was the biggest film in the box office of its day, starred the late, great Harry Belafonte that I got to meet, to be mentored by, and to interview. It was filmed partly in Grenada and partly in Barbados. It's the last major film to have been made in Grenada. And the thing about Island in the Sun was Harry Belafonte's character is this young, brash upstart of a politician. And when that film was being made, there was a young, brash upstart of a politician on his way up. That was Sir Eric Gairy,
Hmm.
who was a really charismatic and world-renowned prime minister, again, from this little piece of rock in the Caribbean Sea.
Right.
What was also very strange about that was a lot of the press around the world started to liken Eric Gairy to Harry Belafonte's character. And I think the film actually helped with Eric Gairy's global fame as well.
Mm. That's really interesting. I didn't make that particular connection. I mean, I still have the songs from the movie in my mind because I mean, that's what most people know and it's part of pop culture. But to really see the parallels and for a film to really put this very tiny little island on the global map and in the purview, I think people in more recent time think about, oh, here was this little island. Reagan had to come in and it got bombed up and something to do with the Cubans. And then that's it. There's history. There's a lot of other things, pioneers.
In January, I did a series of screenings, and the last one that I did was the Spice Island Beach Resort. So we had a lot of Grenadians who live on the island came to the screening, but there were a lot of guests, American and British, who sat in on the screening. What was really interesting was the Q&A afterwards, talking to them about the bus that arrived in to Granada's Beach. And then you saw Harry Belafonte and Joan Fontaine get off the bus. And there's a very famous scene because the law was that in Hollywood at the time, that black man, even if he was the lead in a film, could not be seen kissing or even show any romantic inclination to a white woman, even though that's what was happening in the film. They couldn't touch each other, let alone kiss. It was against the law.
Right.
Mr. Belafonte talks about a coconut scene where he chops a coconut, gives her the coconut, and she drinks from it. And then he puts his mouth where her mouth has been to evoke a kiss, and does it in a way in which it couldn't be edited out. But for me, the other thing about that scene was them arriving. It's the part of Granite's Beach where the bar Umbrellas is.
Yes.
They're arriving on one of the old wooden buses. And it was really interesting seeing people from Grenada, seeing people who were visiting Grenada, seeing those elements and really feeling nostalgic and proud because they hadn't noticed, they hadn't realized that there was this international film that had that in there. When I did get the chance to sit with Mr. Belafonte, he turned around and he said to me that when him and Sidney Poitier were the de facto kind of sex symbols on the planet during segregation, that they had a pact, and that pact was to show themselves with dignity and humanity. And I remember him saying to me, you know, he's passing on the handbook. I have a responsibility too, with the work that I do, to make sure that we are always depicted with dignity and humanity. There are so many stories that originate from that island. If we go back to the Haitian Revolution,
That's right.
feed on, Grenada has been at the center of world news and events for a long, long time. You know, like I said, we punch above our weight.
And it's true, right? All the interconnections that exist with Fedon and then that informing Grenada's own revolution or at least uprising against the British. And like, there's no surprise that when we're speaking Grenadian Creole, for folks who speak Haitian Creole, there's so much similarities in terms of the conjugation of verbs and the lexicon or even the places named on the island. I'm from the parish of St. Andrews. We hear it a lot and can appreciate it. For you specifically, you know, what does being Grenadian heritage, having that Caribbean immigrant experience behind your own lived experiences, how has all that informed your understanding around belonging and then even Black achievement since it is Black History Month?
I'm a human being, right, that the world sees as a Black man, and that comes with a certain responsibility. But it also comes with a lot of gifts as well. Being Black is a privilege. It's not a hindrance. Okay, I wouldn't want it any other way, right? It's one of the privileges of my life to basically live the dreams of our ancestors. I think we spend too much time worrying about what other people think. And I say this to my white friends all the time. I don't give a damn what you guys think about me. We need to learn to put ourselves first. For a long time, our brilliance was hidden away from us, kept away from us. I'm doing a project at the moment. We're scratching the surface of maybe doing a documentary about Notting Hill Carnival, making Notting Hill Carnival the subject. Instead of making it about a person, the Notting Hill Carnival will be the character.
Right.
One of the things that I didn't know was when the MV Windrush in 1958, 59 was sailing to England, it was about 2 days out. There was a fear that the ship was not going to be allowed to dock at Tilbury in London. The ship was going to be turned back because the government decided that they were going to have a vote in the House of Commons to have the ship returned, because the 1,000 passengers on there, there were certain people who felt that having that number of Black people arriving on a ship to the United Kingdom would adversely affect the social fabric of the country. So they were voting to try and get the ship turned back.
By virtue of their passports and citizenship and being in the Commonwealth, they have very much a right to be there. the exploitation was from the UK down to the Caribbean. It's like, well, why not the people that you've been exploiting also go up and venture? Let there be some symbiosis, right?
Absolutely right, Dr. India. These people were not immigrants. They were part of the British Commonwealth. And as such, if you were part of the British Commonwealth, if you came from India, any of the Caribbean islands, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, before independence, you all had a British passport and were British subjects. You were not immigrants coming to the motherland, right, to help rebuild the motherland that they've been invited to come to by the British government. For me, when it comes to race and racism, I find it an oxymoron. I also think that it's a psychosis that many white people suffer from and then try and impart that psychosis onto us. We are the victims of their psychosis. Yeah. And usually, what happens if somebody has a psychosis and they try to attack you in the street, the police arrest them and then they get taken away to some institution where they are worked on. But that hasn't happened for us. Yeah. The story has to start there in terms of these people were invited. The government decided that they wanted to turn them back. And that's been the tension between Britain and its Black citizens ever since. The carnival, through safety in numbers, we needed something that we could come together and celebrate in freedom. It's our weekend of freedom. Like slaves had one day a year, and in Grenada, they celebrated through jab jab to scare their masters. Yeah. Carnival became our thing, the one weekend where we can celebrate our culture. But in doing so, it became this visible thing where it's like, oh God, we can't have them out on the streets jumping around and
Right.
listening to loud music and all this kind of thing. So it becomes militarized in terms of the amount of police and the amount of equipment that those police come with in order to police and marshal people having fun.
It's unfortunate in that the policing of our bodies continues even after emancipation, right? People actually feel when they see us in mass, right? Like it's threatening, but it's really about celebration of resilience. It's really a celebration of life and freedom and personhood and all of these other things. And that despite the confines in which these systems of oppression impose upon us, we still find a way.
The thing about it is it's revolutionary to express yourself freely, even when you are told that you shouldn't. And what's been really interesting about mass, about carnival, has been the other groups of people who find freedom in carnival as well. The gay community, the trans community, different ethnicities, right, who come to carnival to express their freedom. People don't really understand the backstory.
Right.
One of the beautiful gifts of being Black is that out of any kind of exclusion, always manage to create beauty.
When I think about the mediums in which you choose to tell stories, you see yourself as a visual artist because there's so much range in terms of how one can tell these stories or provide a platform through which these stories can live. And then I can also even see how Maurice Bishop's legacy has informed your own personal revolution because he talked about self-reliance. Hey, despite all these other issues and systems that are intending to oppress us financially or economically, socially, politically, that we need to kind of do this for ourselves from within. And so I can see that coming through in your art.
The work that I did back in March, I created an art piece, an art film. Why I call it an art film is because it's non-narrative, it's just metaphors. It's called The Unspoken Elegance of Stillness, and it was my love letter to Black women. And in that love letter to Black women, what I was doing was there is no points where that film is about any kind of trauma because Black women all know their trauma. But what it was a reminder that all human beings are descendants of the original Black woman.
That's right.
So all human beings have some features of that original person, no matter what their ethnicity. My mother was the first person to take me to National Portrait Gallery. She took me and my two younger brothers. And this was a time when Black people really did believe that going to the West End, which we used to call going up west, where the museums and galleries and all the posh shops were, believed that we weren't allowed up there because they didn't like us going up there. My mum's friends and, other people from the Caribbean community in which we lived in West London, they would say to her, Joan, why are you taking the kids up there? They don't like us going up there. And my mum was like, no, I'm going to take them up there because I want them to understand that this is their country, that there is no place in this country that they cannot go. I want to expose them to great art and things that live outside of where we live in this part of London.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going there and I had no aspirations to be any form of artist back then, but there was something about being amongst portraits that spoke to me. And I don't know why at that time it did. Even if I was having a hard time at school, I'd take up 88 bus. It's free. You can just walk in. So I would go there. At a very early age, I had a nickname for the National Portrait Gallery. The National Portrait Gallery is the family album of our nation's achievers. But when I walked around the gallery, I couldn't find any of the cousins that looked like me or you.
Mm.
I knew lots of people that were achievers. Like, there was no portrait of Naomi Campbell in the National Portrait Gallery. I was like, what's going on?
Mm.
None of the great people I'd grown up watching, seeing, or knowing, their portraits were not in there. And I thought that was strange. So I wrote an email to the then director of the National Portrait Gallery, and I put all my grievances in it. And I sent the email, and I didn't think I would hear anything. And I got a response.
Mm.
And I was invited in to meet him. So we had a 3-hour meeting in which he made lots of cups of tea. We had this really great conversation about representation.
Mm.
He said to me, so if you were going to do this, how long would it take you? And I said to him, I could do all these portraits in a year. And he was like, no. It's like, this is like a 10-year project. It takes years to do this and whatever. And I was like, no, I could do it in a year. So I set about making those portraits in a year. Having people sat in front of you and making those portraits, people start telling you their stories. That's where the documentary was born, because I couldn't be the only person hearing those stories, and those stories only live with me.
Mm.
And then I anecdotally tell them at dinner parties. I didn't think that that was fair. So I decided I was going to make a documentary, and then went about trying to sell that to the BBC. And, no one told me that you're not meant to call your friends or people that you know that work at the BBC and go and have meetings with them and pitch them an idea. That's not how it's done. There's a whole process. But I didn't know the process. I just did what I thought was. So the two things kind of happened coincidentally, where the BBC were like, we're kind of interested in this. And then I created a proof of concept where I called some prominent people that I knew. We sat down, I interviewed them, I photographed them. The whole process took about 5 years. And it wasn't 5 years in terms of getting the work done. It was 5 years in terms of meetings with the BBC, with the National Portrait Gallery, where people would actually take it seriously. In the end, at the National Portrait Gallery, I remember having a meeting with the chief curator and her team. And that meeting was me and my team. And I remember we sat in that meeting at the National Portrait Gallery. The chief curator was telling me all the things that they couldn't do. And I had a pair of white gloves on that my printer had given me because he didn't want me to spoil his prints, that he'd wrapped up like babies in swaddling. And I was unwrapping them and then pushing them across this large table. And this woman was in full flow telling me and the team what she couldn't do. And she saw the first one and pulled it towards her, and still talking about what she couldn't do. Then pulled the second one towards her, and then she stopped and she said, who made these portraits? My team in unison went, Simon did. Suddenly the conversation changed. Conversation changed to, oh, we have to take these portraits to committee. We would love to have these portraits.
Mm.
So they took them to the committee, and every one of the portraits that was presented to the committee, they decided that they were going to accept them into the permanent collection of the National Portrait Gallery. Edward Enninfold, who was the first Black man to become the editor of British Vogue, he said, Black is the New Black became a pivotal moment in culture for him.
Mm.
The things that he ended up doing at Vogue magazine to really center Blackness in the conversation about culture and fashion that he could not have done if it wasn't for the doors that Black is the New Black had opened.
Wow.
We talk about Grenada and Grenadians being revolutionary. Black is the New Black was a revolutionary moment
Mm.
because he said not only was he allowed to talk about his Blackness, but it was the first time that he could speak openly about his queerness as well.
Wow.
And he said in that moment, he realized that the door was open. And he says it wasn't only being Black and queer, every other person with an agenda or a cause walked through that door as well. So he said it was a pivotal moment and should always be remembered.
Belonging to Blackness, proudly sponsored by Get Connected. Get Connected is a nationally recognized premier cross-cultural and inclusive business networking organization for professionals, business, and civic leaders, entrepreneurs from all cultures across industries and sectors. Our mission is to curate meaningful cross-cultural business and social connections while amplifying, celebrating, documenting, and showcasing the contributions of people of color and allies across our communities. To learn more, visit us at www.getconnected.com.
Act 2, The Road. So, Simon, at this juncture, I oftentimes ask my guests this question, and I'm curious to hear your response. How do you play?
I dance, I travel, I cook. Cooking's like making art.
Mm.
People make the same noises when they see good art as they do when they taste good food. So I'm listening to those notes.
And what's your favorite dish to make?
There were so many. I remember I used to work for Time Out magazine many years ago, and we were based in Covent Garden. And next to Covent Garden, you've got the food mall. There was this guy who had fallen out with his wife, left Trinidad and come to London and started to cook for us. He was Trinidadian, she was Thai, and basically he had made a fusion of those two foods. His food has been one of the influences on me, the fusion of Thai food and Caribbean food, bringing those together. So mixing noodles with God knows what, that's my thing.
You've spoken publicly about your journey as a cancer survivor, a deeply personal and transformative experience. How has that experience shifted your sense of purpose as an artist, deepened how you engaged with themes related to memory, identity, and belonging?
Nothing really prepares you for sitting in a room with a doctor who tells you that you're probably not going to see the end of the year. Those are the times that we live. Fortunately, through God's grace and the skill of my surgeon, I'm here today talking to you. Bladder cancer is one of the worst cancers you can ever get.
Mm.
But I'm here. I'm not a deeply religious person. Religions, I equate them to a membership club. I have a very personal relationship with God. And as an African descendant person, the gods that we also believed in. We, as Black people, look at each other wrongly if we talk about the African gods that we believed in before colonialism gave us these new religions, which we all, follow en masse. What cancer has taught me, live unapologetically. Life is short. We must appreciate life, to live our lives to the fullest. People say to me, okay, but you're not religious, but you talk about God. It's because I do believe that my life was saved for a purpose. And maybe I am one of those people within the diaspora that my job is to tell stories to help us feel better about ourselves. And we used to call them griots. When I first started doing this work and it started to get notoriety, I remember people would stop me in the street and it didn't matter, male, female, young, old. They would hug me
Wow.
and then thank me. Thank you for making us look beautiful on television and telling our stories in a humane way.
Mm.
Or thank you for what you're doing for the culture. I remember walking in the streets of London with a colleague of mine, white, middle class. He has 4 Oscars for documentaries that he's made. We were crossing the road. This guy in a DHL truck screeched to a halt about 40 yards in front of us and came running back, shouting, "Excuse me, excuse me, excuse me." My white friend exited to the left very quickly.
He wanted no parts.
He wanted no parts. He thought there's trouble, there's going to be a fight. I need to get out of here. And this guy came and just ran up to me and hugged me. And he said to me that him and his wife were watching something of mine that night. He said, I couldn't drive past without stopping to say, thank you, brother. Thank you for what you're doing for us, man, because I've known my wife for a long time. We had a conversation we never had before. So thank you for what you're doing for us. We took some pictures together and he left. My friend came back and he was like, I've won 4 Oscars and no one has ever said that to me.
Wow.
For me, having beaten cancer, I am a big advocate for talking about cancer. 2 years ago, I made my first play, which was Unseen, Unheard, the untold stories of Black women with breast cancer. If I can use my platform to bring awareness to things that need to be spoken about, need to be challenged, that's what I will do. There are a lot of Black women that I've met that tell me that there are huge inequalities with the type of care that they receive in medical institutions.
Absolutely.
On the one hand, we have the ignorance of the people that are going to treat our people, but there also exists an ignorance within our communities as well. There are a lot of Black people that don't take cancer seriously. They believe that it's a white person's disease and that they cannot get it. All human beings can get cancer, right? Cancer does not discriminate. If it's going to come for you, it's going to come for you. Religion plays a part in the reason why so many people die. They put their faith into religion to cure them, and not medicine. My advice to people is do both.
Do both. I appreciate the fact that part of you using your platform is to educate. And even if it's through your art as a way of telling stories where it's emotionally and psychologically resonant with folks.
Nina Simone said that, great art is a mirror. I knew that I was an artist when I made a portrait of my dad. We put it up on the wall and he stared at it for hours. Because I think in that moment, he was realizing that I knew him as much as he knew himself. There is this communication that goes on where people start seeing themselves in other people. And what is an inanimate object becomes the mirror to them. I find that really fascinating. An image of someone that is not there, that we have captured, holds people's thoughts and they communicate them with them silently.
How do you navigate this tension between presenting these stories that at face value are universally human, but then there's a lot of specificity because of your subjects, because of the subject matter in which you're choosing to talk about, specifically around Black representation? One of the people that you highlighted in one of the episodes of The Outsiders was Amanda Seales, also another Grenadian. And she kind of talked about creating smart, funny, and black. And that the questions are, well, are you being too blackety black by even having such a title of a program in a series? And she's like, this is my audience. It's niche, maybe to some, but you want it to be intellectually and psychologically palatable to others, right? Because at the end of the day, as an artist, you need people to buy your work, to be patrons of it, so that you can have more people running down the street embracing you, saying, this made a difference. How do you contend with that?
With lawyers. I've made 2 shows in which at various points we have had to have meetings with lawyers to negotiate certain things. In one of the shows, Earl Cameron was 100 years and a few months when I interviewed him for They've Gotta Have Us. And Earl Cameron is described as the first Black actor to star in a British film to break the color bar.
Wow.
And I was told by the BBC that we could not use the phrase the color bar because I was told in that meeting that in Britain, unlike America, in which Jim Crow laws are written into the Constitution, we did not have a color bar. I answered that by showing various pictures which said no blacks, no Irish, no dogs, which were in the windows of ordinary people when you went to rent a house, which were in the bars and the pubs if you need to go and have a drink. So Britain doesn't have a constitution, it has a monarchy. It may not be written into any constitution or any laws, but it was part and parcel of the fabric of the nation. And when we made that point, we were then told that as long as we took responsibility for any complaints, that it would be fine. And there was no complaints. The other thing was in making of Black is the New Black, I was asked constantly to change the title because the title would be seen as being aggressive. Comedian Gina Yashere.
Yes.
She wrote and starred in Bob's Abiola, big hits in the States. Gina's super cool. She did this whole monologue about why Black will always be the new Black. And it's like people taking our Blackness, appropriating it. It was probably about a 3-minute monologue just from the top of her head. And we filmed it. And we were like, this will be a great opening title. And we've used some of it, but we weren't allowed to use all of it. I was told that a couple of women, white women from the channel, found what she was saying intimidating.
But that's a you problem.
You're telling me this and you totally believe in what you're saying, but the way that it's hitting me, right, it sounds like nonsense. They stood on that and they were like, we are not letting this. So the tension that I have is knowing what to fight for and what to let go. So I fought for the name of Black is the New Black. I was like, I'm not changing it. Changing Gina's monologue, I changed it to include other people's voices within that. That was the compromise that I made. So there are always compromises to be made. But there's one euphemism that I use all the time. When it comes to protecting my babies, I will always protect my babies because these ideas, these shows, these artworks, these are my babies. And I think that this is a problem a lot of the time when I do talks. People say, oh, you know, it's like I have this idea and the channel is asking me to change it to this. Amanda was like, the show's called Smart, Funny and Black. Where are the white people? Will white people get it? Can we have some white people in the show? A lot of people, they're like, okay, if I don't say yes, they're not going to commission the show. And then they go, okay. And it's a compromise which ends up hurting your body. You're not happy with it, but you're going to make the compromise anyway. Then what usually happens is that thing flops because all the things that you brought to it, which are the foundations which it stands on, you decide that you're going to pull one retaining wall out and it's going to be okay. And then you decide to pull out another retaining wall and then the whole thing falls down. And then you wonder why that happened. You didn't keep your walls up.
No, you're losing your own professional integrity along the way.
But many of us do that. The other thing about why I am the way that I am is because myself and Amanda are cousins.
Get out.
Amanda's mum, Annette, contacted me one time. Yeah, Annette was like, my tanti was married to your granduncle. My auntie Omi was married to my uncle Aben.
Wow. Well, you know what? I love what you talked about having integrity and staying true to the art. Oftentimes, the response back is the fact that it's too aggressive, it's too in your face. In reality, it's like, well, no, it's not. It's just that your refusal to view it as equal makes it seem like it's such a jarring experience.
Over the years, I've learned that negotiating with people, you have to find different things to negotiate with. If you're in sales, you're a realtor, you're selling houses, the client is like, no, I don't want to pay that money for that house. Your client is not going to shift on the price.
Mm.
You have to make the price not the center of your negotiation. With the ideas that I sell, I tell Black stories. I remember a few years ago coming to meet a lot of really prominent African American producers. And they were saying to me the same thing. It's like, we all have to go and tell our stories to the man. We have to get permission to make our stories.
Permission. Mm.
Permission, yeah. That's the industry, and them's are the rules.
Right, because of gatekeepers.
We can call them gatekeepers. We can give them different names, yeah. But usually, 95% of the time, the people that we are going to see in order for an idea that we want to make to live in reality, appear on your TV channels or your streaming services, it's one person or group of people, usually white, who have to deem whether or not they are going to take their channel's money and give it to you in order to make that show.
But that's all counterintuitive to being an artist, right? Or a creative, in that, on the one hand, yes, you need to commodify the content in order for you to literally eat and pay your bills and sustain life for yourself. But at the same time, it's a huge sacrifice and compromise that I oftentimes raise with other artists that say, hey, I'm producing art because this particular art, this genre, this representation is necessary.
There are a lot of people out there who go, oh yeah, you had this stuff on Netflix, man, you sold out. I'm like, you're damn right I sold out, and I will keep selling. The word sold out means that you've sold all your inventory. It's all done. You've made a profit. What's wrong with making a profit? If your goal in life is to make the art that you want to make and then keep it in your house and not show it to anybody, and that makes you happy, good on you. You'll be the most famous artist in your own underpants. But my thing is, find the platforms in which the most amount of people can see these stories that will maybe help change their perceptions about themselves or about people that don't look like them.
Mm-hmm.
If Netflix is watched by millions of people around the world, then I want to be on Netflix. It's like, yes, the money is great. I get that money, I can invest it in the next project that I do. When people stop me in the street and thank me, okay, for making the work that I've made, I know what that means. I realize that the work no longer belongs to me. As soon as it goes out there, it becomes a gift to those people. They are receiving it as a gift, and that's why they are thanking me. Making the work that I do is not easy. You finish at the end of a day, maybe you've done 18 hours in a day. Yeah, you go to bed, you're still thinking about this thing. You wake up in the middle of the night, still thinking. It's the type of thing that breaks relationships because it's not a job, it's who you are. The way that films are financed, the way that TV shows are financed, the way that art is financed, right? You have to convince these people that the stories that you are telling are in their commercial interest, right? Because it's a business. I have a phrase that I use sometimes when somebody is getting stuck. And they're like, I'm just not sure, Simon, that our audience is going to be, relatable to this thing that you want to give to us. And I'll say to them, it's not about your audience at all. It's about you,
Mm,
because you're the filter right now. So there's probably 60 or 70 million people out there that totally understand what I'm talking about and are receptive to that.
mm,
But you're not sure because you are not culturally educated enough to understand the premise that I'm putting forward. But it doesn't mean that your audience isn't.
right.
So what do you expect me to do about that? So I say to them, well, what you do, commission this show and take the plaudits who are going to pat you on the back for having the foresight to have commissioned such a beautiful piece of work.
Hmm.
And that usually works. There are three types of people that I meet in this who are gatekeepers. Those who are just there, they don't give a damn about anything. They're just there to pick up their paycheck and go home at the end of the night. And there are a lot of those people. Then you get the people who are driven by ego. They want to be famous. They want to stand out, right? They're looking for the next big thing. And if you have it, they need to scratch that itch. And I like those people because they will go out with your black show wrapped under their arm and they go fight for it.
Right. So they could say, I did that.
I did that. And then the third one, almost a hybrid of the first two. Yeah. But they are racked with fear.
Mm,
Oh man, but if I commission it, like what if it goes south and I get fired? Mm. Those two are the ones that I usually wrestle with. They're lazy people. I just leave them to where they are. They ain't going to do nothing. And to tell you the truth, I have met curators and commissioners who are Black, who are in group number one.
mm,
Yeah, they ain't going to do nothing. They're just going to sit there and go, we just can't do anything.
right.
They just want to keep their job. And I respect that. That's cool. But I need to find what I call the brave hearts. And there are very few of them who are out there. But when I do find them, they're usually the people looking to me to create something for them that's going to stand out.
As a closing question for you, how do you want Grenadian British stories to live on in future generations of visual art and film?
That's a really good question. A lot of our traditions are being lost, right? We're becoming monolithic in terms of becoming the culture by which the country we live in, yeah, and forgetting about our own heritage, the uniqueness that separates us as a unique voice from other people. One of the things that I like in my work is that I can be very specific about certain types of people, be very specific about how I tell those people's stories.
Mm,
Because you get to see those people not as people that fit in, but people that stand out. So I would like the legacy of our stories to be that we have stories that stand out. Hollywood is dying a death. It's almost like a dinosaur which is suffocating in real time.
mm.
I love my metaphors sometimes. It really puts a picture in your head.
I saw it.
Yeah.
I saw specifically a T-Rex.
There you go. It was a T-Rex I was thinking about. In the Caribbean, in Africa, I think that there is still room for cinema to thrive. In America, you have people like Marvel Studios telling all of those great stories from the Marvel universe and all this kind of stuff. In Caribbean folklore, we have those stories. We have love stories, horror stories, fantastic futuristic stories. We have children's books. We have all of these things. We have the whole gamut. But we also have a community within those countries that, cinema wasn't a big thing for us, but we are very much into watching films.
Right.
And I think that there is a way of creating an entertainment art form from cinema within the Caribbean, but being very specific about the stories we tell within Caribbean, within Africa, and where we show those, how we get people to show up to those things as an event.
What makes our story so resonant, I would think, to your point around Marvel Studios and those universes, it's like we have that through the Orishas. To have Anansi and all of these other kinds of characters are coming from our own traditions.
It's really important that we retain our traditions. We're losing our traditions. The way that we retain our traditions is to turn those into stories and putting them in places that people are used to revering stories. So put them in cinema, put them on television, put them in books. There's no reason why somebody listening to this podcast, right, sitting on a story of some fantastical character from the Caribbean canon can't be the new J.K. Rowling, write the new Harry Potter,
Right.
right? There is no reason why. We just need to find the excuses to do that. Our stories are who we are. I, for one, before I breathe my last breath, hope that I can help to start getting people to understand the beauty of the stories that we have within our culture. There are so many Black cultures that make up our diaspora. The one great thing about that is through social media, we are finally getting to meet each other and getting to know each other. And that's a blessing.
Act 3, Where We Land. All right, Simon. So we've reached the point of our program that I would love for you to share for those that might be in the UK or down in Grenada or in the US or wherever. Please tell us what's upcoming, if there are particular shows, where can people follow you, support your work, attend your events, that sort of thing.
I'm always available on Instagram at Simon Frederick. It's really simple. It's just my name. I think there's a lot of people out there that are wanting to buy art, wanting to invest in artists, but they don't know where to begin. I'll be opening a new Instagram page, and on that Instagram page will be my art, which is available for people to purchase. So it's there. It'll be very easily accessible for them to purchase art directly from my website. In terms of institutional art that I'm making, so as I mentioned before, an art piece called The Unspoken Elegance of Stillness. We showed that back in March at a gallery in London called the Art Hotel. In the basement, they have a gallery. So you've got 6 screens, 12 projectors, and then one great big screen. So it's like an oval. You're diminutive in the space.
Wow.
We are showing images of Black women as giants. The Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra is now turning The Unspoken Elegance of Stillness into a symphony, which will be played live at the Africanism Gala in Pittsburgh on November 8th. So
I love it. What a way to celebrate Black women. We have music. We're giant size. I mean,
there's going to be a finale to that as well. So we're actually having a casting at the moment for what happens there. Watch out on my Instagram for news about that, or go to Africanism Gala on Instagram as well for when those tickets are going to be available. I was in Pittsburgh a few weeks ago. I heard the first 3 minutes being played by the string section. It took my breath away.
Wow.
Next year, I have a coffee table book of my portraits being published. So that will come out in October and November next year. And hopefully this documentary that I'm working on as well. This year is all about making and doing. Next year is about releasing all of that stuff.
It sounds like you're staying booked and busy, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking time out of this very busy schedule of yours to join us here on Belonging to Blackness. Simon Frederick, folks.
Thank you very much.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others and be sure to subscribe. Find us on my website, www.indialoricwilmot.com. Follow us on IG and Facebook at belongingtoblackness_podcast for the latest fashion and accessories. Visit www.shopbelongingtoblackness.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.